Good morning, children. Today we are doing Going Places by A.R. Barton from a Flamingo text. In this story, Barton explores the theme of adolescent fantasizing and hero worship through the character of Sophie, a young teenager girl from a lower middle class family. Sophie is a daydreamer and an escapist. She creates a parallel world in her mind where she would like to become an actress, a fashion designer, and own a boutique. She considers the young Irish footballer Danny Casey as a hero. And she keeps on building castles in the air. When reality hits her, all her dreams appear to be shattered. The author has thus emphasized the aspirations and ideals of modern young generation, at the same time highlighting the pain of unfulfilled promises and unrealized dreams. There are 5 characters here. Sophie. Jansi is Sophie's close friend and very practical, but Sophie considers her a gossip monger. There is Danny Casey, the talented footballer. Jeff is Sophie's hardworking elder brother who is also a mechanic apprentice. He is a sports enthusiast and confident of his sister's desires and fantasies. Sophie's father is another practical, hardworking person who wants to provide better facilities for his family. A.R. Barton is a modern writer who lives in Zurich and writes in English. He has authored many stories like Going Places, which are mainly considered with the problems of the stage of adolescence, like fantasizing and hero worship. We'll move on to the lesson. When I leave, Sophie said, coming home from school, I'm going to have a boutique. Jansi, linking arms with her along the street, looked doubtful. Takes money, Soph, something like that. I'll find it, Sophie said, staring far down the street. Take you a long time to save that much. Well, I'll be a manager then. Yes, of course, to begin with, till I have got enough, but anyway, I know just how it's all going to look. They wouldn't make you a manager straight off, Soph. I'll be like Mary Quant, Sophie said. I'll be a natural. They'll see it from the start. I will have the most amazing shop the city's ever seen. Jansi, knowing they were both earmarked for the biscuit factory, became melancholy. She wished Sophie wouldn't say these things. When they reached Sophie's street, Jansi said, It's only a few months away now, Soph. You really should be sensible. They don't pay well for shop work. You know that. Your dad would never allow it. Or an actress. Now there's real money in that. Yes, and I could maybe have the boutique on the side. Actresses don't work full time, do they? Anyway, that. Or a fashion designer, something a bit sophisticated. And she turned in through the open street door, leaving Jansi standing in the rain. If I ever come into money, I'll buy a boutique. So Sophie and Jansi are returning from school. She tells Jansi her dreams of owning a boutique after leaving school. Jansi, who is a practical-minded girl and not a dreamer like her, tries to drive some logic into her head. She tries to reason that such a thing requires a lot of money. Sophie replies that she would become a manager till then and save the money needed for the boutique. Jansi again contradicts her childish dreams by saying that she will not be made a manager straight off. Sophie continues to speak about her dreams of owning a boutique and says that it will be the best in the city. Jansi reminds that they are both destined to work in the biscuit factory. She is quite practical and is aware of the realities of life. She wishes that Sophie too would come down to reality. But this doesn't bother Sophie, who quite suddenly says that she would then become an actress like Mary Quant and be natural. As actresses do not work full time, she would be able to manage her boutique as well. In spite of Jansi's advice that she should not indulge in fantasy, Sophie continues to babble about being an actress, about a desire of being an actress or a fashion designer. Ah, if you ever come into money, if you ever come into money, you will buy us a blessed decent house to live in and thank you very much. Sophie's father was scooping shepherd's pie into his mouth as hard as he could go, his plump face still grimy and sweat marked from the day. She thinks money grows on trees, don't she, Dad? Said little Derek, hanging on the back of his father's chair. Their mother sighed. Sophie watched her back, stooped over the sink, and wondered at the incongruity of the delicate bow which fastened her apron strings. The delicate seeming bow and the crooked back. The evening had already blacked in the windows, and the small room was steamy from the stove and cluttered with a heavy breathing man in his vest at the table, and the dirty washing piled up in the corner. Sophie felt a tightening in her throat. She went to look for her brother, Jeff. So, as she was entering, she tells Jansi that she would become an actress or a fashion designer. Her father, who is inside, overhears her and very sarcastically tells her that if she ever comes into money, the first thing she should be buying is a decent house for her family to live in. Her little brother Derek too mocks her by saying that she thinks money grows on tree. Sophie's mother, who was doing the washing at the sink, sighs at her daughter's fantasy. As Sophie looks at her, she feels absurd at the dressing sense of the mother. She has a crooked back and she wears a delicate bow fastened to her apron strings. Sophie notices her mother bending over the sink. The small house is steamy from the stove and dirty dishes are piled up in the corner. Seeing all this poverty, Sophie feels a tightening in her throat and then moves on to search for her brother, Jeff. He was kneeling on the floor in the next room, tinkering with parts of his motorcycle over some newspaper spread on the carpet. He was 3 years out of school and an apprentice mechanic, traveling to his work each day to the far side of the city. He was almost grown up now, and she suspected areas of his life about which she knew nothing, about which he never spoke. He said little at all, ever voluntarily. Words had to be prized out of him like stones out of the ground, and she was jealous of his silence. When he wasn't speaking, it was as though he was away somewhere, out there in the world, in those places she had never been. Whether they were only the outlying districts of the city or places beyond in the surrounding country, who knew? They attained a special fascination simply because they were unknown to her and remained out of her reach. Perhaps there was also people, exotic, interesting people of whom he never spoke. It was possible, though, he was quiet and didn't make new friends easily. She longed to know them. She wished she could be admitted more deeply into her brother's affections, and that some day he might take her with him, though their father forbade it, and Jeff had never expressed an opinion. She knew he thought her too young, and she was impatient. She was conscious of a vast world out there waiting for her, and she knew instinctively that she would feel as at home there as in the city which had always been her home. It expectantly awaited her arrival. She saw herself riding there behind Jeff. He wore new shining black leathers, and she a yellow dress with a kind of cape that flew out behind. There was the sound of applause as the world rose to greet them. So she goes in search of Jeff and finds him tinkering with parts of his motorcycle in the next room. He has been out of school for 3 years, which states that He is 3 years elder to Sophie. He now works as an apprentice mechanic. Sophie wonders over the areas of his life about which he has never spoken. Jeff is grown up now and he has developed a habit of speaking less. He's reserved by nature. Sophie is jealous of his silence. Jeff's world remains a fascination for her simply because it's unknown to her. She longs to know more about his life. She wishes to be admitted more closely into her brother's affection, hoping that someday he might take her along with him to the unknown places that had so far remained beyond her reach. Her father does not permit that, and she also thinks that Jeff considers her too young. She is impatient to enter the exotic world, the vast unknown world. She wishes to explore. She dreams of riding behind Jeff on his motorcycle, imagining an applause from the world as she makes her first entry. He sat frowning at the oily component he cradled in his hands as though it were a small dumb animal and he was willing it to speak. I met Danny Casey, Sophie said. He looked around abruptly. Where? In the arcade, funnily enough. It's never true. I did too. You told Dad? He shook her head, chastened at his unawareness that he was always the first to share her secrets. I don't believe it. There I was looking at the clothes in Roy's window when someone came and stood beside me, and I looked around, and who should it be but Danny Casey? All right, what does he look like? Oh, come on. You know what he looks like. Close to, I mean. Well, he has green eyes, gentle eyes, and he's not so tall as you would think. She wondered if she should say about his teeth, but decided against it. So Sophie tells her brother Jeff about her meeting with Danny Casey, an Irish sports star in the arcade at Roy's. Jeff is a sports enthusiast, and Sophie simply wants to get his attention and admiration. Jeff knows that she is a hopeless dreamer and he doesn't believe her. She says that she met him while window shopping at the Roy's. Sophie describes a meeting with Cassie. She makes Jeff promise not to tell anybody about her meeting with Danny Casey. She continues to say that her meeting with Casey was a chance encounter. She wanted his autograph for her younger brother, Derek, but since neither of them had a paper or a pen. And so Cassie and Sophie started talking about the clothes in the Roy's. And they decided to meet the next week, and Cassie promised to give her an autograph then. Jeff doesn't seem to believe her. She then further gives him details about his physical appearance to make the meeting sound realistic. Their father had washed when he came in, and his face and arms were shiny and pink, and he smelled of soap. He switched on the television, tossed one of little Derek's shoes from his chair into the sofa, and sat down with a grunt. Sophie met Danny Casey, Jeff said. Sophie wriggled where she was sitting at the table. Her father turned his head on his thick neck to look at her, his expression one of disdain. It's true, Jeff said. I once knew a man who had known Tom Finney, his father said reverently to the television. But that was a long time ago. You told us, Jeff said. Cassie might be that good someday. Better than that, even. He is the best. If he keeps his head on his shoulders. If they look after him properly. A lot of distractions for a youngster in the game these days. He will be all right. He is with the best team in the country. He is very young yet. He is older than I am. Too young really for the first team. You can't argue with that sort of ability. He's going to buy a shop, Sophie said from the table. Her father grimaced. Where did you hear that? He told me so. He muttered something inaudible and dragged himself round in his chair. This another of your wild stories? She met him in the arcade, Jeff said, and told him how it had been. One of these days you're going to talk yourself into a load of trouble, her father said aggressively. Jeff knows it's true, don't you, Jeff? He don't believe you, though he would like to. So Sophie's father has finished his supper, and then after a wash, he sits down to watch television, cleaning the space on the sofa by throwing Derek's shoes into a chair. This emphasizes the unsophisticated lifestyle of the middle class family of Sophie. So Jeff appears to be finally convinced into believing a story, and he shares it with Sophie's father. Her father's belief annoys her. So they continue to discuss about Danny Casey and they just ignore what she has told. She adds more embellishments to her story to make it sound credible. But her father and Jeff start discussing about the abilities of Danny Casey, totally ignoring her. Her father rubbishes Sophie's claims and warns her that one day she would get into a lot of trouble because of wild stories. Sophie retorts that Jeff believes her, but her father says that he doesn't believe, although he would like to. That brings us to the end of video 1 of Going Places. Thank you, children.